this is Sasha bringing you a video tutorial today from BP4U, and today we're going to be talking about brushes. And I have been told a few times that brushes can be a little bit complicated, so today we're going to uncomplicate them. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to select a brush. So we're going to come down here, and right here is my brush tool, so I'm just going to select that, or I could have pressed B on my keyboard. So we've got several tools up here. So the first thing that we can do is set our size and hardness. We can set our blending mode, which we'll explain more about blending modes in the blending mode video tutorial. We can set our opacity, and we can set our flow. So let's go ahead here and we can set our size. Let's go ahead and make a brush a little bigger than that, right about here. So obviously, if you look here, you can see these pixels, and the more pixels that are in the brush, the bigger the brush is. It goes all the way up to 2,500 pixels. So we had it right around here. And we're going to leave our hardness at 100%. I'm going to leave my opacity at 100% and my flow at 100%. You can pick your color down here, but I'm going to keep black for right now. And I'm going to make a dot. So here you can see a brush that is a hard brush at full opacity and full flow. So let's go ahead and we're going to understand hardness first. Let's go ahead and pull our hardness down to 50%-ish. And we're going to make another dot. And you can see the edges of the brush are softer than the edges of that brush stroke. So let's pull our hardness all the way down to 0. And you can see we have a very blurry looking brush. And this is the brush that I typically use the most because it blends everything so well. So let's go over here in our history panel and just grab a blank document again. And we're going to understand next opacity. So we're going to move over here to this document for this purpose. And I'm going to make a black dot at 100% opacity with a very hard brush. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we're going to pull it down to 75% opacity. So now you can look under here, and under this brush you see nothing, but under this brush I kind of see the flower and part of the little boy's arms. So let's go ahead and pull this down to 45% opacity. So I'm seeing even more of the picture through this dot than I am through that one. And we'll do 15% opacity. Now you can still sort of see the dot here, but I see more of the picture than I do the dot. So opacity, in a nutshell, is how little of the brush that you will see. And what I mean by that is like how clear or how transparent it is. And so here it's not transparent at all, but here at 15% opacity our brush is pretty transparent. And so we are working with, when you're working with a specific layer, if you are painting it on, for example, skin smoothing, you don't want to go too crazy when you're smoothing somebody's skin. So if you go ahead and you use a brush at a low opacity, then you can control how much of that you're putting on to your picture. Or if I'm using a layer, if I'm using an adjustment layer, and I want a lot of an effect up here and only a little bit of an effect down here, maybe I could go ahead and I can make 2 adjustment layers, one for the spot up here and one for the spot down here, or I could just change the opacity through my brush. So let's go ahead and let's try that. Let's let's do this adjustment here. So let's go ahead and we will change the hue of the yellows, and we'll add some saturation to them. So I like this effect for the flowers, especially the flowers back here. So you can see, watch this back corner. Do you see that back corner? You can see that there. I really like it a lot for there, but I'm not as crazy about it on his shirt, but I do like it. And these flowers up here, I think it could be toned down on some. So let's go ahead and we're going to invert this layer mask here, and that would be Control-I on your keyboard. If you're on a Mac, it would be Command-I. So I'm going to set my opacity at 100%, and I'm going to grab a smaller brush. I'm going to do a brush that's 300 with no hardness. And I'm just going to paint that one back here. Oops, let me grab my white. White reveals, black conceals. So I'm going to make that pop back there. Maybe even back here. There was some stems back there. This is giving my background a little bit of color that it didn't have before. Something kind of unique. I'm going to take it off of this flower here. So to do that, I'm going to use a smaller brush, but I don't want to take it completely off of that flower. I still want that flower to have some of that color. So there's a solution to that. I'm going to make a black brush around 40%. So here you can see that now that is still changed, but in our history here, you can see what the difference between that is. It's a subtle difference, but it really popped there, and now it just kind of pops. So now we can go ahead and using the same opacity, or a similar one. Let's do 30%. Let's go ahead here and paint over this crown. Oops, we need a white brush. White reveals, black conceals. Paint that back one there. And we're going to paint over some of these flowers here. Make sure that we don't miss any. Okay, so here we have this change that we've made, and we wouldn't have been able to do it like we did if we had not used a different brush opacity. And another thing that we can do here is we can just add just a little bit of this change to his shirt, and I'm going to grab a little bit of a bigger brush, maybe even a little bit of a smaller opacity, and I'm just going to paint it over his shirt lightly. And I'm going to size my brush down to get over here. And so here you can see again the difference. And so that's just one way that you can use brush opacity. So we're going to go ahead and just delete that. Now we have our last tool here, which is flow. Now flow and opacity may look the same at the beginning, but the reason that the flow is a little bit different is flow is the speed at which the coverage is gradually applied until the value of the opacity is reached. So if we have our opacity at 100% and we've got our flow at 35%, let's go ahead and grab ourselves a hard brush. If I press and I click down, it's going to keep building up to that 100% opacity. So let's go back. So if I wanted to paint something at 100% opacity, if I just keep painting over it, you can see that my flow is soft, but now we've made it to 100% opacity. Now if I had my flow at 100% and my opacity at 20%, and I keep painting, it's not going to let me go past that 20%. Do you see that? So the flow will build up to the opacity. So it will never go past the opacity that you have it set at. Let's go ahead and select a new document. We'll set our flow at 25% and our opacity at 50%. And we'll go ahead and we'll just keep painting here. And you see it's not letting me go past that 50%. Now we have built up to that. And so that's just another handy tool that you can use to kind of control your brush a little bit. So the last thing here I want to talk about is what kinds of brushes that we have. And so if you click down, you can see your size and your hardness, but there's also this arrow over here. If you click on that, you can see all kinds of different brushes here in your brushes box. So I'm going to go ahead and hit replace brushes, go to libraries, and I'm going to go into my downloads box because I have a brush here, and I'm going to double click on that, and so now I have this handy frame brush. And now I've just loaded a new brush into my Photoshop. And so I could use this brush here to add a frame to a photo. These aren't the ideal tools that are the ideal settings that I would want to use for that. There, now you can see a little bit better. So you can see here that you can do all sorts of pretty awesome things with your brushes. And again here, if I want my basic brushes back, I can just click on basic brushes, and now I have these brushes here. I can do some drop shadow brushes, and now I've got some square ones that I can work with. All these down here are brush presets. You can see that they sort of change here as the settings change as you click on the different ones. I have some natural brushes that I can use, and some of them have some pretty cool effects. And so there's all kinds of different things that you can do here with your brushes after you understand the flow and the opacity and how to change your hardness and your size. So I hope that you have learned something new from this video, and thank you so much for watching this video tutorial. Happy editing!